That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast at the intersection of faith and fear, where every week we discuss what scares us in order to find what saves us. This is the fear of God. Speaking to you right now is one of your hosts, Nathan Rouse, and typically with me is fellow co-host Reed Lackey. And guys, he was here a minute ago. He had some kind of, a sort of very studious look about himself, like he was going to go dig up some information. He said to let him go look into the karmic credit plan. So, I mean, it's kind of a bold new world with bold new ideas. So we'll see kind of what that yields. I don't really know. That's news to me. But hopefully he can share a little bit of what he finds there. In the meantime, allow me to welcome you back to our series on learning how to lose, titled In the Morning. This series is meant to help us meditate on loss as we navigate life inside a pandemic. Wild days, to be sure. But I'm getting ahead of myself because here at The Fear of God, we explore. We don't explain, except for maybe right now, when I explain that you can listen to The Fear of God at your nearest podcast platform. You can watch The Fear of God on YouTube, and you can browse The Fear of God on the web at thefearofgodpodcast.com, where you will find episode archives and merch, including campaign buttons, some lovely t-shirts, some cell phone cases, some magnets, some Reed. Hey, buddy. Welcome back. I'm really dying to know what you found in your digging through the karmic credit plan. Is that just like a new thing through your bank? Is that like something existential and non-currency related? Like,
I didn't have any karmic credit references.
oh, uh-oh.
That was my
I've been
problem.
here so long, my karmic credit got good.
You don't have a baby. Check again.
Wow. Okay.
Chances are you've got at least one baby.
Yeah. That's man. Old Chris Rock's making a comeback. He is a prophet.
I do wonder because
Tell me.
We've been friends for a very long time, and I wonder
You
with
and Chris
all
Rock?
of the little we go way back.
Wow.
We go way back. It's really
I mean, you do kind of know everybody.
he's a good guy. I have met him. I won't tell the story because it's not that big of a deal. But but no. So you and I go back so far that I wonder where listeners sit with like these little inside jokes, these little things that are like, what are they referencing? Clearly, that's something from entertainment. But like, I don't know how like when we pull things like I'm a so father and stuff like they're like, do people know? Because they're not like things. Sometimes we reference things that are made up between us, just that have emerged from our interactions. And sometimes they're just things that we watched and enjoyed. And they're out there.
Right.
Yeah, they're out there in pop culture. But, pre-viral days, like those were the early days of the internet. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Beetlejuice.
Good job. Let's see. Business section. Ooh la la, what do we got here?
It's business time.
Business time. All right. So listen,
what you got?
Listen, here's the thing, listeners. We want you to go and subscribe to our show so that you can receive some email communication from us when big important things happen. And listen, as an incentive, we will give you a free sticker. Listen, all you got to do is go to the website, go to thefearofgodpodcast.com. Just click that little subscribe button and then respond to the email that it sends you. And then we will reach out to you, ask you for the best, most comfortable way for you to give you a free sticker. And
I don't know. I don't want the most comfortable way. I mean, because what is that going to require me to get it to them? Like, what? I want you to hand deliver it, or via carrier pigeon.
There's that Simpsons episode where where Barney is like, it's like a faux Beatles
Hey,
episode,
Homer.
and Barney is like the John Lennon of the group, but he's like lovey-dovey with the Yoko Ono of the group. And they walk into Moe's tavern, and Moe's like, "What can I get for you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'll have a beer." And she said, "I will have a single plum floating in perfume served in a man's hat." And Moe just goes, "Okay," and then like pulls them both out.
Exactly. Yes. When you say,
It's
what's
perfect.
the most comfortable way we can deliver the sticker to you? We
Sure,
really don't want that information.
It's
We
just-
just want a mailing address.
It's so great. So yes, subscribe, give us your mailing address. We'll send you a free sticker. You can put that free sticker on anything you want, and it'll be great. So yeah, that's
And
what
then
I've got.
when you put it on whatever you want, pending it's, safe for work nature, post it to social media and tag us.
That'd be
and-
great. That'd be great.
we'd
Yeah,
love
do
to-
that.
I think we'd love to see that. Next bit of business is, guys, I hope you are enjoying the audience participation, what you're watching, reading, and listening to. We did a couple of installments with some little friends, little foggers. We did an installment last week with continuity guru Steve Beckley. We've got a new one coming at you this week, but if you're enjoying that, even if you're not enjoying that, we would enjoy receiving one from you. So record yourself, record your spouse, record you and your spouse, record your neighbor, record your kids, record your neighbor's kids, whatever. Just get the permission first, okay?
Yeah,
so record them, and then what?
So be careful about that.
Yeah.
Just make sure
record
that-
them and email that recording to fearofgodpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to utilize that on the show. And that's all I got, Reed.
Beetlejuice.
It's showtime.
Yes, it is. Listen, last week,
Tell me.
sometimes
Are you
there are
telling me to
advantages.
listen, or the
I'm telling
listeners to listen?
listeners to listen. Everybody listen. Listen when I say something. Okay. Every so often there are benefits to tagging and sharing things on social media. And last week, one particular listener, one Mr. Tony Fagan, won a copy of Lovecraft Country, autographed by Matt Ruff, and all he had to do was just
Congratulations, Tony.
post it. Yes, congratulations again, Tony. And all he had to do was just post to social media. It was a great fun time. And so, in tribute to that, and in deference to his continued supportive listenership, we have a very, very special surprise for you at the moment from one Mr. Tony Fagan himself. So.
What you're watching, what you're reading, what you're listening to. Fear of God podcast.
That's great.
All right.
I
That's
love it.
amazing. Thank
I
you,
love it
Tony.
so much.
That's beautiful.
Thank you so much, Tony. That was great. So yeah, Nathan, what are you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to?
So we did finally dive in, because my wife made fun of me for how minuscule amount of money it was. We signed up for the Apple streaming service, whatever it's called. Is it Apple Plus?
Apple TV
Apple
Plus? Yeah.
Sure, is it? I don't know.
Right? We got a year of it free when we got a new Apple TV for Christmas, and it just came with a year free of it. We've enjoyed it. It's good.
Well, cool. Well, we did not get it free. I would like to get it free, but instead we're spending $5 a month, which is
Okay.
that's not too bad.
Good. Yeah, it's not bad.
And we did start Defending Jacob.
I read that novel.
Yeah?
But I've been curious to see the series. I actually was gonna watch it day and date of release, but that was the day I discovered it was a series and that they were only releasing the first episode then. So I was like, okay, well let me hang back.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I know, it's complete. I
Yeah,
think.
it's complete now. But I was sort of monitoring the progress up to its release because I knew it was coming out, but I did
Oh.
not know until literally, maybe that's just my own deficient research, but I did not know until like literally the day before or day of it was released that it was a series and not a film. It is complete now, just haven't made it to it yet.
It's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
I mean, we're about 4 or maybe 5 in.
Okay.
And my wife is watching it, mother-in-law is watching it, so it's, you know, it's kind of our thing. The group of the trio of us are watching right now. If it were just me, I might have sort of passed on it after a few.
Gotcha.
I don't have her name in front of me, but the actor from Downton Abbey who plays the wife.
Michelle Dockery.
Yep, Michelle Dockery. She's great, and
Mhm.
Chris Evans is good. You know, there are moments where you're like, maybe you don't quite have the range I want you to have. This kind of in summation, it has the production value of something like those first few episodes of The Outsider.
Yeah, sure.
But
sure.
scripting wise, at least the first few, it was pretty, gosh, this is a strong phrase. It was kind of paper thin. You're like,
Sure. Okay, yeah.
This is okay. I mean, it looks good, but
yeah.
there's not a lot of there. And even to the point, I'm not making this up, episode 5, the most recent one we watched, I think 4, I don't remember, 5 or 6, something like that. Like they have Chris Evans say the line, whatever it takes.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you're like, that seems dumb.
Yeah.
It's not really a winky show, right? It's
right.
not,
That's the thing. Defending Jacob is not the self-aware.
No, it's not the moment where,
right.
you know, he below camera pulls up a little cap shield, like, wink, wink, you know, and then lays it back down. It's like, I don't know, y'all.
Y'all remember when I did a thing? I did a thing.
Y'all know who I am? You recognize me? I still got that sexy Infinity War beard.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I will finish the season, which I'm pretty sure is kind of it for the show. But
I would imagine so. Yeah.
Right now, it's more kind of a meh. That's all right.
Meh. I get it.
That's what I'm watching.
Okay.
Or I think I'm watching.
So my wife and I are a little late in catching season 2 of this, but we have been catching up, and as of this recording, are on episode 7 of the 2nd season of Dead to Me, the Netflix series Dead to Me.
Enjoys that.
Yeah, I loved the first season. My wife and I both did, and it was just propulsive viewing. The first season was really fascinating premise. It's the kind of thing that, because each episode is pretty dependent upon like surprises, you know, the premise kind of out the gate, which is 2 people meet up at like a grief share meeting and strike up a bit of an unlikely friendship, and then things progress from there in some, again, really propulsive ways. The first season is very entertaining, and the 2nd season is quite good. My wife and I were reflecting on kind of where we are with it, and like I said, we're about episode 7. I'm not bored, and I'm genuinely enjoying myself, but it doesn't quite have the sort of just enlivening sort of energy that season 1 had. It's good. It's well written. It's got some strong performances to it. Actually, I said well written. It's competently written. But and it's got some strong performances. But
Does
season
Christina
2,
Applegate at one point say, "I was married with children"?
no, but more than I remember. And I tell you, if any TV show on the planet will acclimate you to the usage of the F word, The Leftovers will. But even having just recently rewatched season 2 and 3 of The Leftovers, Dead to Me, they use the
you
F
went
word.
back through all the way 3?
My wife had never seen the
Goodness
show.
gracious,
I
Reed.
cannot
I feel
listen.
like
No.
I feel like you got taken in a cosmic anomaly, and I'm left here wondering, like, what the hell? Where are you?
I just left you in the hotel room. I said,
Yeah,
you go.
well, we're not even there yet, Reed.
No, we're not.
there yet,
We're not.
so
I
look at
am.
you.
You're not.
No, that's not how this is going to work. I'm going to start smoking profusely and wearing light.
We are living reminders.
Yes.
So no, but all of that to say, like, there's more than I remember from season one. There's just a lot. Season one was mature content anyway, but more than I remember from season one, there's just a lot of just sort of flippant use of the the F word to just fill space and not necessarily as direct and deliberate as that word can be utilized for. So that's why I say it's competently written. But we'll see. I mean, I am enjoying myself. It just doesn't have the strong recommendation factor that season one has. But my wife and I are in the
Did you ever watch The Wire?
No, The Wire is probably. It might be my biggest cultural blind spot in terms of
you didn't have to get hyperbolic just with a single question.
No, but what I mean is that the volume of people who talk about and reference and know The Wire, I should have made it to it by this point.
It's not often for me to feel like I've got a leg up on you pop culturally, but I'm happy to stand astride this one.
Oh, so I watched season 2 or 3 of The Leftovers again, so you got to be like, yeah.
I've seen it. But no, where I was going is in terms of creative deployment of the F word, The Wire has a scene, maybe in season 1, I can't quite recall where it is, where the two leads, you would recognize these actors, their names aren't coming to me, but they're cops, right? And they're assessing a crime scene. And literally the entire scene, the only dialogue in the scene is about 100 uses of the F word, but with such charisma and creativity and how it's used, you're like, I'm so impressed right now.
Wow, awesome.
It's amazing. You probably YouTube it, since it's probably what you're going to do instead of actually watching it.
I'll watch the show, okay?
I'm kidding.
I'll get to it.
It's actually a hard show to watch. It's got remember last week I talked about Dark, how they just don't care if you keep up?
Sure. Yeah.
The Wire is that, but police procedurally. You're like, I don't understand these civic organizations and structures and social sort of dynamics that you guys are talking about, but you don't care if I do. So I guess F words. Yeah.
So they throw in a 5-minute scene of just the F word to catch everybody up.
And child Michael B. Jordan.
Oh, I did not know he was in that.
Really? Yeah.
I did not. No.
There's
I knew he was
in there. You'd recognize.
I knew he was in All My Children. He's what? Idris Elba?
Yeah, Stringer Bell, man. Okay, it's time. Yeah, you need to watch The Wire. Stringer Bell, that's a hell of a character. Michael K. Williams, Omar.
Yes, who I know.
That's great. Yeah. You should
okay. All right. Okay.
You do that. You check back in with us next week after you.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll do 5. That's a lot. Okay, yeah.
All right. I should get back to Tony.
Yeah. Take us home, Tony.
Do we do the whole thing?
It's
30 seconds.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
I mean, I may as well.
Where you gotta be?
What you watching? What you reading? What you listening to? Fear of God podcast.
That's some commitment.
That's beautiful. That is.
I love it.
I love
it. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. All right. So, Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
And now is the time where we venture back into Jarden, Texas, and the content of HBO's The Leftovers, Season 2. But not quite in Jarden just yet. We're going to be going to parts unknown, to characters we haven't caught up with in a couple of episodes, and then maybe we'll get back to Jarden, and we'll take a little detour, if you will. But either way, we'll find ourselves discussing all the various aspects of life post-departure, trying our best to let the mystery be on this week's installment of #TV Guideposts and Season 2 of The Leftovers.
I'm really annoyed that you finished the whole series again. Just for
Hate the player, not the game.
Right, I am. You got it wrong, and you are wrong.
You're like, I did.
I did.
I did. That's what I'm doing.
It's
No,
funny.
listen.
It's funny you just said that so grievously incorrectly. But I was listening to a podcast today. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast today, and this guy was trying to say that a filmmaker, it was a movie podcast, and the guy was trying to highly compliment a movie he was talking about, and referencing that this particular director, filmmaker, did more with less. But he kept saying less is more. I wish people would have a more less is more approach. I'm like, you just did that like 3 times. I don't think you realize.
You keep using that phrase. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Anyway, yes. So I do hate The Player.
Yeah.
I've actually never seen The Player, actually.
Once, years ago.
Yeah.
So listen, you know that once you start watching this show, I mean, like, I'm not gonna listen. I love my wife, and
I'm not asking you not to.
I love my marriage, and there's no way I'm gonna introduce her to the show and tell her she can't finish the show. And
so
tell her I'm not gonna finish it with her.
It's called Off Ramp. And speaking of off ramps, I'd like to get on the exit here. No,
let the mystery bye.
Oh my God. That's like tenuously close to like messing up that song for me. And I really don't want that to happen.
Like, you are not allowed.
Episode 3 is Off Ramp. It features Lori and Tommy, and myself and the rest of the viewers listeners will quickly catch up so that we can figure out how to talk to you about this. And all sort of, jokiness aside, which is impossible, let's be honest. This is a really powerful episode. I think.
It really is. In a lot of ways. Absolutely. Yeah.
For how high it takes you, and for my God, how low it pulls you by the end of it. I mean, it's funny because I remember most of the imagery from this episode, even though I had not watched it for like a third time. I'm sorry, I'll lay off. So I remember most.
Please continue.
I remembered most of. I know you love it. I remembered most of the imagery from this episode, but I didn't remember the context or the sequence. And so, I bought it in the first run where I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Lori and Tommy are helping people defect from the GR. Like, this is so gloriously wonderful, and praise to God, look at this is happening. And then there's like, wait, wait, I think I remember. Oh God, oh no, that's
yeah. Mama, no.
You're like in that car with that family. You're like, no.
Like, please, you're in the wrong lane. Oh my God, steer away. Oh my God.
Jeez Louise, that's terrible.
That's awful. Awful. That's awful. Oh man. It is.
What are some highlights or lowlights for you from this?
So I'm gonna heap a lot of praise on this episode. So let me start on a low light.
Okay.
An observation that my wife and I discussed that made me recognize how potentially, I won't say desensitized, but we absorb a lot of mature content on this show, subject-wise, thematically, etc. So I am somewhat inoculated to potentially disturbing and upsetting things. I won't say I'm impervious to them, obviously, but it was this episode that sort of raised the conversation between us about how disturbing some of the elements in The Leftovers is and can be. For instance, that scene between Tommy and Meg is just terrible. It's awful. I don't mean it's terrible as in like it's poor craftsmanship. It's
sure.
It's awful. I mean, the
if you're watching or haven't watched this, Meg from the first season, who is a figurehead, a growing figurehead in the Mapleton GR, dramatically re-enters the series in this third episode and rapes Tommy. I mean, like, that's effectively what happens.
Yes. And then following that, bad enough, following that, he is dragged from the truck and doused in gasoline and a lighter, like the whole scene is just so oppressive. Like, everything about it is just so oppressive. And so that's something that I'm like, okay, like I forget because of how rich my emotional affection is for this show. I forget that there are moments like that a casual viewer
Sure.
or somebody who's not used to that kind of mature content might be really put back on their heels by it, and in some potentially upsetting ways. And I think to what you described was perfect. This film has some heights of storytelling and also has some really big lows that might, I think, this more so than certain other episodes in this season might like be too much for some viewers in its sort of oppressive nature. So that's kind of the little bit of a ding on this particular episode. But again, there's a lot to praise because it's exceptionally well written and it does a lot to I think there's more done in this episode to unpack the characters of Laurie and Tommy than were done in the entire first season.
Sure. Yeah.
In like, you know, an hour.
Well, and
of
this
time.
is a perfect episode of illustrating what the show starts to, the heights it starts to grasp when it's not bound by the text of the book.
Yes.
You know, being
Yes.
able to, you know, this season so far, episode 1 is more or less 95% just the Murphys, brand new characters we haven't met up until
Right.
then.
Mhm.
Episode 2 is catching us up with how Kevin and crew get to Jarden. And then so point being, like, there's a lot of real estate covered in these 3 episodes,
No,
character
absolutely.
wise, that creates new plumb lines for where each character is in a real dramatic fashion. And I don't think where this episode, how this episode resolves, and I don't mean the specific plot point, I just mean that wave we just talked about, undoes the value of the beauty that I think is present in that opening crescendo. I think Kevin says it in season 1, people aren't ready to feel better, they're ready to effing explode.
Yes.
Like Laurie, and Amy Brenneman just kills it.
She's fantastic.
And you know, you can speak to this in a moment if you want, but I like the actor who plays Tommy, and ultimately I'm not sure the show, I can't remember exactly how far the show takes him, but episodes like this remind me of why I appreciate what he brings, because they're all just these simmering volcanoes.
Yes.
And gosh, this episode is so heartbreaking because he's infiltrating GR houses.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the wear that's having on him,
Yes.
the wear and tear, as it were, that's having on him, but it's for the purpose of bringing them out. And I want you to add whatever you want, but I think thematically, one of the richest bits of dialogue in the series so far is Laurie to Tommy, why are we losing?
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy says, because they, the remnant, the GR, are giving them something. We can strip it away, but once it's gone, we have nothing to put back in its place.
Yeah.
And there's something
exactly.
profound about that,
Absolutely.
and instructive about that. Now, it's arguable maybe they learned the wrong lessons from that. But
yeah, I agree. No, I agree.
You know, it's that, but even quote unquote learning the wrong lessons still leave them in a very interesting place as characters, right? Like,
wow,
wow,
totally.
Oh my gosh, this is a bit creepy, and I was not ready quite for this turn. But
yes.
Anyway,
I would say regarding the comment you made about Tommy, one of the things that I feel about the show is I feel that Tommy ultimately, in the scheme of the Leftovers, I think becomes more of a supporting utility player.
Sure.
And that is
yeah,
because I
raced to the end.
I don't know if you know, but I finished it, so I went all the way. But he has some interesting and substantive things to bring, and I really like the actor. But yeah, I think that's one sort of thing about him. I think this episode might be some of his
Sure.
finest moments, in terms of as a character and as what he's bringing to the table. And yeah, so like you mentioned about like the denial that Laurie is in, and kind of the conflict and not really even understanding why they're losing and stuff like that. It's moments like where the woman that they did rescue says, well, my husband's angry. And then she says, like you. And Laurie says, I'm not angry. And God, I love it. The woman just sort of resigns herself to not even bother to fight it. Like to just, okay,
I think she
okay.
actually, yeah. I was going to say, I think she actually says, okay.
She
but
just
yeah.
says, okay, like, and
Yeah.
it's a great moment because she's totally calling Laurie out without calling her out. She's just like, okay. So one of the things that I'm going to mention this because it's kind of just a trivial insert in the midst of everything else. One of the advantages to my having seen the whole series again is I do not believe I would have written this moment down or paid any degree of attention to it had I not done this and remembered this character from a recent rewatch of the third season. The television, as Tommy's returning,
Story about a man
mentions,
resurrected in Australia on the TV.
Yeah, I don't think I would have remembered it. Maybe you would have, but I wouldn't have remembered old David Burton. So anyway,
I mean, I don't remember his name.
Well, yeah,
Jeez, Reed.
They said his name. They said his name on the.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, they said his name. Yeah, I'm not that much of a jerk. But no, they said his name. Just eat it a little bit. So yeah, the other thing that I had mentioned is just the music cue chimes in when that woman that they rescued from the guilty remnant unfolds the note that says "any day now," and then that prompts her to just sort of pushes her over the edge to, in a gruesome way, take her own life and the life of her family with her.
What remind me, that note she opens I can't remember now, was that a leftover artifact in her handbag, or that was a plant I can't remember exactly how that.
If my memory serves, it's what they wrote. It's what when the guilty remnant like came and infiltrated them, they wrote something and then like Laurie, I think, crumpled it up, threw it, and then she collected it and pocketed it, and then opens it back up and it says "any day now," which again speaks to what Tommy was observing about the guilty remnant. It's like they have something. It's dreadful, but they have something. And so then obviously the scene where Laurie is going in to promote her book and to possibly get it published, and then just you watch it fall apart minute by minute by minute. Although I must say I still feel like it's such an explosive moment where he's like, well, no, we got to add feeling to it. What I don't know, Laurie, and what I need to know is how do you feel about it? And in response, she freaking tackles him. She just
wild.
Barrels into him and just starts beating the fire out of him. It's a great scene. But yeah, that's that.
But I think what I love about that, I'm sorry to cut you off, and we don't have to dwell much longer here, but as sort of suit and tie exec as that sort of publisher is in terms of a character archetype, I actually love what he's after,
yes
And I think if there's an underlying sentiment to this show, it's what are you actually feeling in response to the things that are happening to you, and everyone denying and suppressing and stuffing down or shoving down a well. Read, know where this is going.
I do.
Kind of what they're feeling. And gosh, there was something I was gonna and a theme I wrote down that we can just do a hit and run here is staying okay takes so much work. And just just something to linger with there for later. But anyway, so I mean, I can talk more about this episode. We can move on to the next. Do you got any other?
No, I'm good to move on to the next one. So the next one brings us back into Jarden. So off ramp, if we didn't make it clear, is all Laurie and Tommy. So like Nora doesn't show up, Kevin doesn't show up. Like it's all catching up with Laurie and Tommy. In the next one, Orange Sticker, we come back to Jarden, and it focuses specifically on the moment we had seen in the first episode that there was an earthquake. And then we saw in the second episode that following the earthquake, Kevin woke up in the now dry riverbed because the ground had opened up and he had a cinder block tied to his leg, no clue how he got there or what happened. And so Orange Sticker kind of shows us some of those events, but from Nora's perspective, what Nora was going through while all of those things were taking place. I'm sure you do. You remember the significance of Orange Sticker?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you tell everybody what the significance of Orange Sticker?
Well, Reed, with that kind of handoff. Yeah, in the in the town of Jarden, houses with an orange sticker that have emblazoned upon them the word verified and some sort of emblem, I can't recall, is just meant to signal that they have verified that no one departed from this home.
Right.
And
Well, and there's another one.
Okay.
It's funny. I was remembering Orange Sticker differently because I remember that in the episode Guest, an orange sticker meant you were a legacy, meant you had experienced a departure before. And so I think you're right. And you know, Lindelof's savvy enough for it to have dual meanings. But the first place my mind went was like, oh, Nora is going through this again because she's a legacy. And so she's experiencing all these things again, which is the first 10 minutes of the episode is her waking up. Kevin's not
gone.
Beside her.
Yeah.
And then she steps outside.
Flips out.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Carrie Coon, man, I know there's more to come. You can probably verify that with an orange sticker, but her performance in this show is so just devastating. And she is overcome with dread at what waking up to Kevin's absence means or could mean, and leans in to that emotion for 5 minutes of screen time, and then when he shows up just shuts it off, just utterly turns it off. You're exactly right, like a switch. Like she hugs him when the hug is passed, she's out. She leaves. And so she's clearly, I had referenced in last week's episode how Nora is very clearly like on the edge. She's built up this sort of house of cards of I'm safe, and it's all falling apart. She moved here as a matter of geography so that she would be safe and so that no departures would happen. And like her first or second night here, then all of this is coming unraveled. And so that it's pretty powerful in that aspect. The only other notes that I have on this episode narratively revolve around Patty's continued and increased presence. So I want to yield. Yeah, what a wondrous gift is endowed. This episode is the first one where she really starts owning the scenes again. You know, 95% of her screen time in season 1, she was silent, and then she's not all of a sudden. But this is where you get just full on lived in Spectre Patty just running off at the mouth, and I'm loving every second of it. Like, go ahead.
No, well, I have a question for you. So say what you're saying, and then I'll ask you.
Well, mainly I was just scanning for standout stuff. But what were you going to ask?
So I don't think this is theme. If you feel like this is theme, we can hold it maybe for our full season 2 discussion. So I'm kind of trying to interrogate both the substance of Patty's presence here and her motivations here, because it feels a bit schizophrenic is too strong a word, but it feels sort of dichotomized because she helps him find his phone. She knows exactly where it is. But she clearly either lies to him about other things or doesn't know other things, because, and I want to be very careful for listeners who are watching this as we watch it, because I will just say that there are things she tells him with the same level of veracity about his phone that are simply not true. And then at the same time, she occasionally seems to be legitimately trying to sort of preserve him, but then also at other times is trying to antagonize him. And
I feel like you just tried to lay a trap for me.
I'm not laying a trap. No,
I know. But what you're saying, she articulates that is untrue. I think we're talking semantics. I think that one, you have to recall that. Now, you don't have to recall this. And this isn't me poking the bear here. You've seen the whole thing. I don't remember if the show definitively declares this is an expression of a fractured psyche on Kevin's part, or I think it's more that than it is an actual spectral presence. I'm going to lean more in the fractured psyche part.
Okay.
But what that means then is it's also laden with Kevin's own subconscious sort of intuitions and feelings. She can tell him where the phone is because subconsciously he kind of knows.
I thought that.
What I think you're alluding to is the line, "They vanished." Spoiler alert. I'm not going to spoil it, but I think from a certain point of view, Kevin has told Jill last episode, nowhere's safe. This is no safer than anywhere else.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It would make sense to me that on a certain level, because Kevin is so self-hating and cynical and believes the worst about the world, that he would totally buy into a notion of a second departure of some sort. Does that make sense? Like
it makes complete sense.
Are there other examples where you're like, I think
no, but okay. I'm going to try very carefully not to spoil this for our listeners. If what you're saying is true about the fractured psyche, and so I thought the same exact thing, where I thought, well, if she's an extension of Kevin, well, he remembers where his phone is. And if she's an extension of Kevin, he remembers what happens. Something is shown later in the season that would undermine the premise you just expressed. So Kevin knows more than he knows he knows. So yes. And so that's as much as I can say it. Kevin knows more about everything than he realizes he knows. Because remember, one thing that is present to viewers who are only up to episode 4 is Kevin sleepwalks.
Right.
And so if we view Patty as an extension of a fractured psyche, but knowing, like, maybe she's privy to the information that sleepwalking Kevin has, sleepwalking Kevin knows more than she tells him. And so that's the piece that I'm like, yeah. And so that's why it's a bit of a struggle for me, and I'm just going to have to let the mystery be. I'm not being facetious, because I think that I do feel like the show makes a better case that Patty is an extension of a fractured psyche than it is that she is an actual sort of spectral attachment.
With agency, right?
Right, exactly. I think the show makes a better case that she's just a the way, pulling back to Haunting of Hill House, she is like Liv to Hugh, like it's how Kevin sees Patty being. And so, yeah, but that's the part that I couldn't quite grasp, because regardless of her, the substantiation of her presence or not, she is representative of the inner turmoil that Kevin has, whether she's there as an actual
one of my
ghost.
favorite exchanges, and maybe thus far one of my favorite Justin Theroux moments, is his heartbreaking delivery of the line, "I don't want to kill myself," to Patty.
Yes.
That she then rebuts with, "Well, you're certainly entitled to your opinion.
Yes.
I'm just glad we finally talked about it." Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I don't want to kill myself. Well, you're entitled to your opinion. Like, oh my gosh, what a brilliant bit of scripting that is.
Yes, no, it really is. Although her Rick Astley impression is negligible.
It's a little odd choice.
No
there.
weirder than the freaking morose dirge of "You're the One That I Want" from Grease. Like
Yeah, but that was a piece of soundtracking, right?
It is.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I found that kind of fascinating choice. The Rick Astley one was more like, is the joke that she's Rickrolling Kevin? I mean, sincerely, I couldn't figure out if that was what was happening there.
No, it could be.
Feels like a super super like cultural moment imported into the world of The Leftovers, like a really odd sort of thing there. Isaac gives us some interesting character bit on John. He says, ain't nothing more dangerous than a man who don't believe in nothing. Nora, in her efforts to, I'm just throwing out a few notes here, Nora, in her efforts to shore up her own feelings, says to Jill of whether Evie departed or not, the flood happened 3 years ago and the ark took on all the animals it needed. Why in God's name would it take on any more? Which I actually really loved as a sort of analogy and how she rationalizes what she's experiencing here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like there was one more here.
Talk about Neil's weird proclivities.
She was pooping on him, Kevin.
It's so disgusting.
Married for 16 years or whatever she did. Married for 16 years. Never asked me to poop on him.
Oh my God. I'm like,
and she's so good. It's like, I believe you. I believe you know?
Oh my God.
As a last little narrative beat, when Kevin is standing, we know that Kevin knows he's been out there and is trying to play off his presence and look like he's joining the search party for Evie and the gang. And that moment when the cop says to John, they think they pulled a palm print off the window, like your heart just sinks.
Yeah.
This is not going to go well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You've got two equally damaged and angry men
headed straight for an inevitable collision. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's all I got, man.
All right. So I guess there's nothing more to say than
It turns out that Reed has finished the entire series while Nathan and listeners are moving at the agreed upon pace of 2 episodes at a time of a single episode of the Fear of God podcast. But these are the things we do for marriage. And next week, we'll check in with episodes 5 and 6, which I don't have notes on or titles for because I've not watched them yet. But this has been a look at episodes 3 and 4 of season 2 of The Leftovers.
I can tell you more about the episodes.
Read like,
5 and 6.
Episodes 5 and 6 are titled.
5 is a really good one, so make sure you stay tuned for that.
I hate you. Right when you said that, I was like, damn it. I don't know if he's just being funny or not now. Now I want to go watch it, but now I'm just pissed that he did it. One time, slight, not really, but slight, maybe spoiler alert for the end of Lord of the Rings. My brother, when those films were coming out, he had finished the books before I did. I didn't finish this book series before Return of the King, watching Return of the King. I had the great joy of watching Return of the King with no knowledge of what happened.
I see. Yeah.
Right. This is what this just felt like when you're like, episode 5 is a good one. Well, going into Return of the King, my brother, is a bit of an older brother as they are, trolled me a bit. And he was like, hey, a hobbit dies. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? I don't want to, what are you talking? I don't want to know. Don't tell me anything, and he was trying to be all coy about, again, spoiler alert here, about Gollum. And,
yeah, of course.
But sideways doing it. And I'm like,
yeah.
So
sure.
That's how that felt when you were like,
oh, episode 5 is a good one.
Okay. Yeah.
We dead again. Dead again.
We dead again. We dead it again.
I wish they do a sequel to this and be like, dead again.
Deader againer.
What's more dead?
Still dead.
We done dead again.
It's like the Friday series, but completely next Friday after next. This is still dead. Cremated.
It's more British, classically trained British people acting like a bunch of Americans. They did again.
They did again.
Oh
Lord.
Should we go to the fog meter?
Let's do it. So, was this your first time seeing it, or had you seen it before?
This was my first time seeing it.
Okay.
I had never seen Dead Again.
Yeah? What'd you think?
Yeah. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Did you?
I thought
Oh,
it
did
was-
you? So I had
Yeah.
I had a pang of nervousness because I didn't remember. We didn't talk about this one at all.
Nope.
Like this, what listeners may or may not know is that this was there was a bit of when we sequenced out the films that would comprise this phase of In the Morning. A previous film was in this slot, and we discussed it. And I was like, I really think we should pivot over to Dead Again. But in that conversation, I had no context for whether you had seen it or not, or exactly what it was. I think you were just sort of saying like, yeah, well, then whatever you feel like, and you deferred to me. And
Well, Riri, you know, now the movie's dated in its production, so you know,
Yes.
it's a mildly qualified love, but not much. But Riri, you know me for 20 years. You know I
know.
am a hopeless romantic, and I'm
oh
like,
yeah,
oh my
that's true.
god, I love these people. I love Kenneth Branagh,
He's great.
Sir Kenneth, Dame Emma Thompson. You
That's
know,
right.
and look
Mhm.
at there. There's Derek Jacobi, Derek
right.
Jacobin. You know, like you probably know this or have been told this in the recesses of our 20 years. One of the first films I fell in love with. Now, I haven't watched it in years. I don't know if I would still feel as strongly, but fell in love with as a film was as a junior in high school watching Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet. And
Oh,
so,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I am predisposed to just enjoy his work. And you may recall Derek Jacobi plays, geez Louise.
It's Claudius, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Plays Claudius, the deceitful uncle, the murderous deceitful uncle of that story. And yeah, so point being, like, you throw a circa early 90s era Kenneth
I
Branagh
gotcha.
tale. Now, if I have any sadness about this film, it's they aren't in full Brit mode.
No, that
you
is
know,
true.
But
Very
no,
Americanized.
I found it very enchanting. Again, the first scene of the first flashback is a little jarring because you're just like, I'm not
What am I
totally
in for?
positive what I'm
Right.
watching yet.
Mhm.
But you know, I mean, and in fact, what I wrote is like, I can't think of other romantic thrillers like this. And honestly, the only other one that came to mind without too much work was something like The Village, which that's a little more subplot, but has at its but even then has as one of its main pillars a very romance driven story. So yeah, come on, baby.
Yeah. So I love this film as well, and this has been a film. This was one of those for me that in my days of working at the video store, kind of fresh out of high school, it was just one of those that was on the shelf, and I took it home because it was a relatively small video store, you know, maybe no more than, several hundred videos available for rent, but this was one of them. And there were times where I would just sort of make my way down the shelf and be like, oh, I haven't seen that. And so I brought Dead Again
What a
home.
life.
Right?
Man,
Oh my God. Yes.
What would that be like right now? Read. Holy cow.
I
Speaking
know.
of romance, that
I know. Right?
is
Exactly.
hot. Like
It's awesome. Oh my God. It's awesome.
like the amount of, you know how last week I was talking about leftovers and let the mystery be being like this exultant, like what you just said had that similar feeling. Like woof, I just felt unanchored from my seat. I'm like, daggum, that sounds amazing. That is a heavenly thought.
Yes.
I'm like, this one, I'm gonna take it home and watch it. Oh, that one, haven't seen it, taking it home and watching
Exactly.
it.
And
I do love my kids, y'all.
Let me just say.
In case it's unclear.
I love him, but boy, oh man. So like for me, it was like, and there's a good like 24 films that when I watch them, I am transported back to, you know, bringing them home. Because can you imagine like going into this film, and maybe you did, going into this film like no context, no idea of what I'm going to get. And maybe that, like I said, maybe that is the experience you had of the film. But I went in and I was just like, yeah, I don't know anything about this. I mean, it just looks like a sort of a thriller. And then getting this layered sort of love story and this mystery underneath it. And there's like this dual mystery happening in the past and in the present, and just a really effective little thriller. It's
And I
got some
mean,
Hitchcock
one of
vibes
those
and-
twists is like very progressive. I'm like, wait a
Oh,
minute.
absolutely.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
oh, wow. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
You did that.
I'm not Roman.
Right. Well,
you're
yeah,
right.
you just said this, and before we get away from it, right here in my notes, where'd it go? General Affair has a pretty Hitchcockian vibe to it.
Yep. Exactly.
As
Exactly.
learning.
you learning. So I got a few trivial bits.
No.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. No.
No.
Share your bits, because
you. Yeah.
I grabbed a few bits.
When you were
This
unanchored.
Look out.
Hell. Okay, so I'll mention two, and then you mention what you've got, and maybe we'll cross over. So, first one on my list is the film was originally shot entirely in color and intended to be screened that way. And intended to be screened that way. Wasn't until editing that the decision was made to present the past sequences, the flashbacks, in black and white to make those distinctions clearer for the audience. But this heavily disappointed the costume and set designers because they made aesthetic choices for a color palette, and had they known it was going to be shown in black and white, they would have just made different choices. So I found that pretty interesting and sympathetically disappointing for the costume and set designers, who I'm sure worked very hard for a color palette, but they never got to enjoy. So yeah, what's your next one?
I loved that Robin Williams that he shows up, and I was like, what?
Yeah, right. Yes.
Alibaba had them 40 thieves. But he explicitly didn't want his name to appear in the credits, so as not to mislead audiences about
people think it's a comedy or something. Well, and what's interesting is, and I couldn't find out. I could not find out how or why he came into, because Robin Williams was a star at this point.
Right.
So him taking a literal 3-scene, 7 minutes of screen time role like this.
When Sir Kenneth Branagh knocks on your door.
Well, that's the thing, is they were friends. Like, they were friends and mutual Shakespeare enthusiasts. And so it's
Robin's like, you ain't never had a friend like me.
No. Oh my God. So, but yeah, it's like, that's the only thing that I could find for his presence in this film, is just being, I think, I didn't have this substantiated, but it's the only thing that makes sense. Like, they were friends, and I think Kenneth just asked his buddy, do you want to be in this? Do you want to be in this movie? And because if you'll remember, you love this Hamlet, Robin Williams plays Osric in that, like they were,
I had not remembered that. These are similar eras. I mean, this is what, 94, something like that? Earlier?
I forget. I think this is 91. I think Dead Again is 90. Yeah, so Dead Again is 91. Dead Again. And I think
Hamlet's 90s.
Dead Again.
Everyone. Wow. Well, we are off the rails. Anchor me back to this scene. Let's get maudlin. Yeah, because Hamlet is like 97, 96, 97.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the only thing I could uncover about Robin Williams' presence in the film, is that he and Sir Kenneth Branagh were personal friends.
Did you see that Donald Sutherland was the initial choice for the Madsen? I don't remember the first.
I love me some Derek Jacobi, but I love me some Donald Sutherland. I love Donald Sutherland as an actor. If Donald Sutherland had been the hypnotist, I would have seen the ultimate reveal of this film coming a mile away. Because when you cast Donald Sutherland in a role like that, I'm like, because Derek Jacobi, when I saw it, I didn't know him. I didn't have context for it or anything. So it's like, he's just the amiable little hypnotist guy who's kind of quirky and a bit of a miser.
I didn't see that twist coming.
No, so there you go. But
in fact, you know what's really funny? They got me, Riri. They got me.
Did they? Oh, did they?
The scene when Branagh encounters Dame Emma Thompson.
Yes.
And you know, kind of gets they get attached because he can't foist her off where he tries to initially. So she's back at his place. Jacoby just shows up. He just wanders in like he owns the place. And I even was like, wow, bro, you know, like you just what? never occurred to me that there was a twist coming with that character. So when it does, awesome. Like, oh, okay. Yeah.
And see, that's, I think, so again, we warned you last week. We're going to warn you again this week. The series we're in is about films that have big reveals or, you know, subtle distinctions that sort of turn everything on its head. So because you are, I think this is what's brilliant about the way the story is constructed. You are expecting a big surprise reveal related to the flashbacks. And I think, I don't know if this was your experience, but the first time I watched it, I was like, I'm prepared for there to be a big surprise reveal regarding the flashbacks. So when it is ultimately revealed, because part of the conceit of the film is Dame Emma Thompson is playing a woman named Grace. She has lost her memory, and this hypnotist is using hypnotherapy to he's an antiques dealer. Yes. He's an antiques dealer. That's the reason I keep sort of repivoting is like his profession is not as a hypnotist. He happens to be
it's a side hustle.
A verse in it. It's like SS, like a side hustle on it. And so he regresses her, and she's viewing things from her past life. And in the past life, there was this grand romance between Margaret and Roman Strauss. But Margaret was murdered, and Roman was blamed for it, and Roman was executed for it. And so I think you're kind of prepared that there's going to be some reveal relative to the Roman and Margaret Strauss. So when it's revealed that actually, in point of fact, the character of Mike Church, played by Sir Kenneth Branagh, that he in a past life was actually Margaret and not Roman, that I think is the twist you're prepared for. So then they tack on this whole thing about you know, the antiques hypnotist dealer having this ultimate connection to both stories, and it's a wonderful disarmament, because I don't know if this was your experience, but me watching it, I was like, oh, that's my big twist. Oh, that's great. That's crazy. So I just never saw it coming, that he was going to have such a crucial and vital role to the ultimate unraveling of everything. And that'll, spoiler alert, that might come up in my thematic conversation. We'll see. So a couple more trivial bits before we move on. Sir Kenneth Branagh and Dame Emma Thompson were married when the film was made, but unfortunately would divorce about 4 years later. So that's kind of sad. But so Campbell Scott is in this film. Campbell Scott.
Don't talk about his role yet, but what are you going to say?
No.
I mean, don't talk about the actions.
Okay, I won't yet. No.
Okay.
Campbell Scott appeared in exactly 2 films in 1991. Dying Young and Dead Again. Those are the 2 films that he was in. Campbell Scott is a really great character actor. He's literally only in like 1 scene of this film. Did you know that
what a scene.
What a scene indeed. Did you know that he's the son of George C. Scott? Did you know that?
Nope.
That delights me, because I love George C. Scott and all things associated with him. But he's the son of George C. Scott and Colleen Dewhurst. That's his mom.
Wow! Whoa! What?
Yes. He is the son of George C. Scott and Colleen. First of all, I think I just blew your mind, because I don't think you knew that George C. Scott and Colleen Dewhurst were a thing.
No, I thought she just lived as an old maid in Prince Edward Island.
Wow. She's not even an old maid on Prince Edward Island. No, I'm just kidding. So, yeah, I know she is. I'm just saying.
I just started that with the kids. That's why it's very fresh in my mind.
Like, don't mess up Anne of Green Gables. Okay, I know that. You watched all of Leftovers. I watched all of Anne of Green Gables. Okay. So
Marilla Dunn did what with who? So wait,
no, she did.
Campbell Scott is Colleen Dewhurst's son?
Yes.
This movie just keeps getting better.
Isn't he great? That's the end of my trivial bits.
That's a good one, though. That's the one to go out on.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I love that one. So tell me what you love about this movie.
Tell me what you love, what you really, really love. I'll tell you what I love, what I really, really love. I mean,
I love it.
really, really, really love Sir Kenneth Branagh.
If you want to be dead again.
Stop.
Okay.
I mean, like I don't know. I've conveyed much of my. Riri, what the hell is up with Campbell Scott's one scene? My man just roundhouse kicks Kenneth Branagh and then leapfrogs over a bridge. What?
Oh, there's so much
How do they
going on in
cast
this.
that?
There's so much going on in this scene.
You know
First
what we
of all,
need? They cast him first, and then he offers some ideas.
He's like, y'all know I
You
can
know,
roundhouse
I
kick him.
can-
You know, that seems like. It seems like
What
that
if you
was-
do this X, Y, and Z sort of movie? Like, no. I only do roundhouse kicks.
This is it. No,
Right.
I'm auditioning for
Right.
Chuck Norris's stunt double.
Yeah.
So what's funny about there's so
Colleen
much.
Dewhurst taught him that.
Have you ever seen her roundhouse kick? Because let me tell you.
Right
So-
when Matthew gets out of line.
Pow! So there's so much going on in that scene though, because like first of all, he shows up and he's apparently knows enough to be convincing about like the fiance thing and the
I was
wedding
convinced.
band and yeah, and then it's like, but the man brought the wrong glove, and so that sort of unravels his whole facade. He brought the wrong glove, but then yes, he runs away. He somehow knows karate. He leapfrogs over there, and this was my favorite part in a film that I love. Dude, 5 stars for me. I love this film. They never come back to that. They
No.
never pay
Oh,
that
no.
off.
No.
It
No,
is
that's
just
it.
it is just anomalous. The only point it is to progress the hypnosis into a deeper state. That's the whole purpose of that entire scene, other than just
Well,
like a moment.
I
for the
mean,
roundhouse kick.
maybe I'm overstating the point here, but I think it's a red herring. It's just meant to be.
Sure. Yeah.
It's meant to take you off whatever scent you might be developing towards, Derek Jacobi.
Yes. That's a good
because,
point. No,
I
that's a
mean,
good point.
because they do establish that Mike Church Branagh has basically placed an ad,
Yeah.
and it's like, you know this girl, and so people like showing up, like, I know her.
The ad talks to you. You know this girl.
So yeah, that's a really, and the point, the weirdness of the scene isn't that he shows up and never does again. It's that he shows up and a foot race happens between him and Sir Kenneth Branagh that resolves with Campbell Scott just like friggin', just blood sport,
Chow.
Jean-Claude Van Damming him down to the pavement, and then
Blood sports. You just made one of the most perfect verbs. We're going to use that again. You blood
Yes,
sported
that's
him.
what we're coming out of that era, so that's the
Yes,
residue
yes.
of the Bloodsport era, and then he just like leaps over a bridge like he's the Winter Soldier or something. You're just a dude in a members only jacket. Like there's nothing special about this guy at all. That's the sequel. Who is that guy?
When he gets across the fence, he has enough time to turn around, look up at Kenneth Branagh like, I could dance.
Come at me, bro. Come at me.
He raises his arms like, what? What? Say something.
You gonna be dead
Around-
again.
The sequel is kicked again.
Wow. Anyway, yeah, so it's just super random for the
Yes,
progeny
yes.
of Campbell and of Colleen and George C.
That's true. That's true.
I don't know if this is later on. Oh, yeah. I wrote a note later on that says the fight choreography in this is surprising because then, in addition to the wild, like 1990s era Nintendo Kung Fu that Campbell Scott does, there's a flashback where Roman, I meant to say punches, but autocorrect said lunches. You can tell I am struggling these days with stress eating, and my phone knows it. Flashback, Roman punches Andy Garcia, and he does a complete spin around, like he's literally on a lazy Susan, right? Like his body just does a complete revolution before falling in the pool. Like what?
with this little like passive face, I'm like, oh
Yeah. It's like you expect little Looney Tunes birds over his head. Yeah, it's just some. I love the flick, but there's some definitely odd choices here.
Yes, indeed. Oh, okay. Man, that's funny. So speaking of little Looney Tunes birds flying around, like, dude, I love. Love's a bit of a strong word, but I genuinely enjoy Wayne Knight in virtually anything he's in. I have never noticed before that pervasive whistle when he speaks. I have
There's
never.
a weird vocal affectation.
Yes, and one that I don't think.
For as enchanting as this movie is, there are things that just should have not made it into the production.
Like, where is this? Is this a choice? Was he struggling with the like some new dental work or
choice.
something?
That's a choice.
Because Wayne, I've never, like, he's prominent in Seinfeld. He's prominent in several other films.
Al's Toy Barn.
I have never heard that vocal affectation before. I have no idea why it's there.
He's just testing some stuff out.
Sure. he's like, here, try this. What if you roundhouse kicked me?
Again, did they hire because of, or did they hire and then? That's the question of the day.
They're in the audition. He's like, so what are your kicking skills?
So, Mr. Knight, can you have a weird verbal affectation?
Oh my God! In the midst of random things, when Mike is walking away after he's been hypnotized and realizes that in a past life he was Margaret Strauss, when he's walking across the street and Wayne Knight is like whistling, trying to talk to him, like getting him across
the street. Like one of the vultures in the Robin Hood Disney movie.
Golly, Jiminy. My man said the vultures in the Robin Hood. 9
o'clock and doors well.
I'm a Netley trigger.
Put that pea shooter down.
Oh my God. Oh Lord.
Okay,
so
what?
When he's trying to cross the street, one of the cars in a movie that is rated R and is not afraid of using strong language.
Is rated R? I don't remember.
I'm almost positive it is, because I think there's multiple F words. Yeah, it's rated R. But in a movie that does not shy away from foul language, somebody in his anger at Mike Church forcing him to slam on brakes yells, "What a butthead!" That's what they yell out and I thought I heard it, so I went back. I rewound it like 10 seconds.
You actually rewound.
I did, because I was like, is that what he said? And then I rewound it and put the subtitles on. That's what he says. He says, "What a butthead."
I mean, again, Think about the era. When was this written? It was The Simpsons were big, and Bart had a propensity for, butthead style comments. Beavis and Butthead was big. Like,
sure.
Okay. They didn't seem to think it was progressive that, Mike was a woman in a past life and is now a man, and sort of the implication of that. But they're like, "Hey, butthead." It's like Biff from Back to the Future. I do speaking of accents, what is up with Wayne Knight's vocal affectation? That's just
no, absolutely.
I will say one of my last I don't really have any theme notes. I'll let you run with that. But non-scare notes is, I love that we did kind of get a low-key sequel to this film, because in the past, you've got Mike Church and Grace as August and Roman Strauss. No.
Margaret.
What's her name? Margaret and Roman Strauss. In their present day, they are Mike Church and Grace. We're just going to naturally assume that some sort of terminal fate befell them at some point after the events of this film, and they were then once more resurrected to find each other, maybe as Gilderoy Lockhart and Sybil Trelawney.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. I don't know. I just like that's kind of headcanon for me, right? It's like,
and there is a world where I could see, like, once Gilderoy Lockhart got all of his selfishness obliviated out of him, then I could see him and Professor Trelawney like having a thing and just like kind of being together. It's weird, but it works. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a pleasant thought.
My last note before we move into, I just have a couple of scares listed, but my last note there is that Robin Williams, I love him in this movie. Like, I just love his presence because I just love Robin Williams. He's a terrible doctor. Like, he's awful. He's right about the whole like karma thing and past lives and stuff like that. But then he's just straight up like, yeah, you got to kill her before she kills you. I'm like, that is no wonder you got disbarred.
I was gonna say
Like,
he
like,
works
or-
like every scene he's in. There's just like mountains of cadaverous livestock around him. It's like, what an odd. Speaking of odd things, you know. It's
Yes,
like,
that's true. That's true.
now, did he bring that to the table, or did they put that on him? You know, it's like Campbell Scott.
What if we did the scene in here?
I could
like-
see that as a Robin Williams offering. It's like, you know what? What if he just works as a meat packer or something?
Do it in the meat locker.
Yeah.
What you got for scares?
I did note that Dame Emma, she is lovely in this film.
Oh, she is. Yes.
Her
Striking.
first night terror when staying at his place is pretty wicked.
Yeah. No, it really is.
Um,
Well, and the
the
scene,
shriek.
yeah, that shriek, and then when she is when she's frustrated and she's frightened by him because of the implications of everything, and then when he's having his little, that's really rough. When he's like shoving all the scissors into her hands, not like stabbing her
Yeah.
with them, but just
Right,
like
right.
placing scissors into her hands, and then the whole thing with the gun and everything. It's it does
never hurt you, Margaret.
oh yeah, chilling, really chilling. So that was a pretty intense scene. I have one other scare listed.
Tell me.
Gray Baker smoking, maybe
Neck
one of
hole.
the most
Say the
disgusting
word, neck
things.
hole.
Why do I need to say that word?
I
Because
guess it's like 2 words. I guess it's just gross.
it's a compound word. That's just one of the most disgusting things.
Hey, man.
honestly. And
How are you gonna smoke now? And he's like, my neck hole.
I do love, it's a subtle little callback to the whole like, hey, you're either a smoker or a non-smoker. Find out
Okay.
what you are and be that. And then I do love, it's just a nice little payoff in a film that at least has one thing that they never pay off. It's a nice little payoff that and he's like, nope, no thanks, keep them. I just quit.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's great. That's really cool.
Your father-in-law will appreciate that Gray Baker smoking out of his neck hole reminded me pretty directly of the cigarette smoking man as he appeared in the end of X-Files season 7, which was the first go round of that show's ending. He
Oh,
did
okay.
return later in full health, remarkably, because as
Didn't
you
know
do,
you could recover from that.
well, it's even worse. The end of season 7 of X-Files, not only has he been carting around this neck hole smoking apparatus for the bulk of that season, or however long he appears in it, it's been years, but the end of the first run of X-Files ends with a cigarette smoking man in this cave compound, like in the out in the mountains somewhere, and he gets like nuked. So like not nuked, but like a missile. It's so dumb. So like it's for real in the last, maybe in the finale of the first run of X-Files, there's this image of him in this cavern at the end of this cavern, and then the flames engulf him. But then 10 years later
He's back.
He's good. He's good. I don't even remember how they explain it away, other than they just kind of yada yada it. He's fine. His clones or something, aliens.
Look over there. Never
He's
mind.
dead again.
Guess who's dead? So yes, I didn't have anything else. So
Kid
I mean,
Frankie's rough. He's a little
yes, yeah. Well, and that is okay. So I don't think we've explicitly said it. And for people who choose to listen to our episode before they watch the films, we love you. Stick around. But the so the final ultimate reveal relative to Franklin
That's a
Madsen.
little redundant, Reed. I got to be honest with you.
Final and
Your
ultimate.
friend here.
Okay, well, it's not the penultimate; it's the ultimate
Right.
reveal. So
The
I mean,
final ultimate. That's
we've
the
spent
redundancy.
more time talking about this word than it took me to say this word.
Yeah.
But the reveal.
No, you can
of-
pick one of them.
Just don't.
You just
put
chose
both
both
of them
of
in
them.
there. Yeah. My point. My point is that when it's revealed that he was the son of the housekeeper to Roman and Margaret Strauss, and that he actually is the one who killed Margaret Strauss. I remember like that's just such a galvanizing reveal. Like it starts by Gray Baker sort of revealing that the housekeeper is still alive and that she and her son run an antique shop. Mike Church sort of ignites in Revelation with all of that. And so one of the things that I was reflecting on in terms of the thematic idea to this is I do love the subversion, and I don't think this is going to pivot us into some big drastic conversation, but I do find it
I don't
interesting.
know, we're pretty good sometimes.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So the film, Robin Williams's role in the film is to set up the central conflict, and he establishes that in the karmic, scheme of things, a wronged individual in the past may seek vengeance on their surrogate in the present. Those aren't his exact words, but that's the basic premise that he reveals. So because of that, and because of that concept, the tensions between Grace and Mike continue to escalate. We mentioned that scene where she's afraid of him, so he gets offended by that and gets upset and begins placing these scissors in her hand, and it's a very upsetting scene in that regard. But what I do love about it, and what I find interesting, is that the ultimate conceit of the film is that both of them have been wronged by somebody who is acting as a kind of puppet master to this whole thing. So Frankie, as this, posing as a benevolent antiques dealer with the capacity to use hypnotherapy to a presumed advantage, is really the ultimate perpetrator of the thing that wronged them both and robbed them both of the romance that they had when they were alive. And so one of the things that I found it really interesting is to look at a story like this and to think about the ways in which we can be set up, I think, to identify. I want to be very careful how I say this because it could be a little charged. I think we can be set up to identify the incorrect perpetrator or villain, or we may point to or be afraid of or be in dread of, to be completely redundant, a particular cause of the problem or a particular threat to us, when really there is a tangential escalation that really needs to be addressed. And what I mean by that, so that I can get out of the vague and into the more real, try to follow me with a train of this thought. I think about some of the things that are tensions in our society and in our social engagements with sometimes even with our family engagements. The subjects that are fraught with tension. They say you never debate politics and religion with anybody because it's always going to end poorly. But I feel like a lot of times there can be this way that we will point to each other as the perpetrators and the real threat and the real problem, when really we need to maybe not look to the side, but we really need to get to more of the root of the problem, that there's a connective tissue that benefits from our turning on each other. And there's I think about things like the way, and we've had this discussion in past times before, but I think about the way that media, so I will say certain brands of media, basically that in many ways, like I was expressing to someone about how dreadful it is that sometimes the media will stoke the fires of something because they need the clicks. Like it is, and I'm not talking about pristine high caliber journalism. I'm talking about like the clickbait media.
Sure.
That it can thrive sometimes on the conflict and the conflict continuing, and it can thrive on ways in which it benefits by conflict being there. And I think that's really the subject that I'm kind of trying to to grapple with is in this particular story, there is a recurring conflict. Roman and Margaret Strauss loved each other. There was a wrong that was perpetrated there. They have, in the context of this film, they have found each other again, and they've potentially fallen in love again as Mike and Grace. And so they've found each other again, they've connected again, but now the same threat arises, and the same threat this time comes from the same source as the initial threat happened, because Roman and Margaret were going to work out their problems. They were going to be fine. And it was actually Frankie who ultimately could not tolerate the continued union of their romance. And so I just found it interesting, and I feel like I'm doing a kind of a clumsy bit of trying to unpack it a bit, but I found it interesting that really Frankie in this story is benefiting by creating the problem between Mike and Grace and making that the problem. He said, he told her, you shouldn't have any more contact with Mr. Church. And he keeps talking about how Mr. Church is going to come in and he's going to have the sweetest words, and it's all just going to unravel for you. When really that is just him continuing to perpetuate a conflict that benefits him by continuing to hide what he's really done. And so in a very clunky way, I'm kind of trying to unpack that in our current times, we may be continuing to perpetuate a conflict, not realizing that it's being, gasoline is being thrown on this fire by other sources that we really need to sort of turn and be like, hey, like, let's try to do this a better way, or let's try to address the real problem and not just continue this cycle of disparate conflicts. So I feel like I've kind of stumbled through that, but that's what I was trying to unpack with Dead Again. I don't know if that sparks anything for you.
Meanwhile, I'm just the romantic SOB who's like, my takeaway was that loving human relationship transcends time and space, and somehow our ourselves know ourselves, and the energy and affection and love that is reflected from the cosmic source of all love, that being God, him or herself, carries us through, and we'll, I don't know, something like that, and
I can tell which one of us is the romantic.
All right, I know. It's funny. The more you talked, I was like, damn it, don't stir me up to just frustration and calling out real world scenarios that, incite my ire. Let me live in my happy place of Dame Emma and Sir Kenneth.
Right.
And
that's right.
And Mike and Amanda and Roman and Margaret, and, me and my spouse, and you to your spouse, and the echoes of eternity that holds for us, and how if we don't idolize those things, we can find in them some slice of the godness in us, and yeah, let me just
I'm gonna come your way, and maybe this will be our final note on this. Is I think that is true, and while I'm sitting here focusing on Frankie's motivations, you are doing what I want all of us to do, and focus on the fact that Roman and Margaret find each other. They find each other again. I think it is completely significant that the film ends with a double shot of Roman and Margaret going from black and white into color.
That's great. I loved that.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
They go from black and white into color, and they share a sweet kiss and then it goes to Mike and Grace, who do the same. And I think that is really it, that the takeaway could be that, yes, while puppeteers and igniters and enticers and people who would want to kind of keep the conflict perpetuated, they will ultimately, perhaps, if we believe...
All on a big-ass pair of scissors.
That will happen. They will, that love can transcend that, and that love can transcend the boundaries of the injustices of time. And
it's so funny. I know you're not trying to spin me up here, but like, I keep thinking about what's coming to me. The progression here was, was it last week? Listeners won't know this. We had an insanely rough technical problem last week. so I can't remember what was said on last week's episode or not, because we did like 15 different takes. But I was talking about the peer who I kept
Yes.
frustratingly wondering. Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned
That's what I feel like is coming to mind here. It's like the ability to name, like in Mike and Amanda's case, because I think that ultimately is what her name.
Amanda's her real name. Yeah, he refers to her as Grace, but Amanda's her real name. Yeah.
Being able to name, okay, this guy is the one trying to do this. Like,
yes,
the value of being able to identify, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be able to point to, not necessarily to cause destruction of in the pointing to, but to be able to identify and say, this is the thing that is creating, causing, stoking animus between us. Now, the problem with Mike and Amanda is neither of them are conscious of this sort of story that they're involved in.
Yes.
But where that's leading me is right back to Lost. And this powerful imagery inherent in that show of inherent in that story of the connectedness of loving human relationship. And specifically what's coming to mind is the Sideways story and how it begins to resolve itself, of the waking conscious awareness of what's happening and being able to help each other in to that new awareness of self. It's really
absolutely. And the scales fall off your eyes, and you see things renewed and afresh, and it's quite lovely, and I honestly, sincerely, I am fine to leave it with your observations, because I think that is even more prominent in the film. We spend a lot of time with the romance between Roman and Margaret, and I am perfectly happy to let that have the sort of final word.
It's like a roundhouse kick on a highway in the middle of the day. On a completely unpopulated highway.
I'm just going to leap off the bridge and run away and save my conflict for another day. Let's leave it there. And you want to go to the fog meter?
Let's do it.
Why don't you explain to listeners what the fog meter is?
Oh, y'all.
Y'all.
Like Roman and Margaret, like Mike and Grace / Amanda, like Sybil and Gilderoy. So too is fear and God. Here at the Fear of God, we use our own homebrewed metric of fear and God, how scary a thing is and how substantive a thing is, to kind of come out the other side with a little potion of goodness. So on the fear metric, I don't think this movie is very scary. I do think some of it, not having seen it before, some of it's a little like jarring.
Understandably. Yes.
I think even the end, though, with the scissor imagery repeated over and over, is a little hurt by the datedness of the production.
Sure. No, I get that.
It's a little silly. So scare wise, I don't know. 4.
It's funny, because 4 was the number I had in my head, and ultimately where I'm going to land is because I think that this is a film that has some nice thrills to it, but I think they are really that. I don't think they're really frights. There's some nice jumps, there's some nice startles, but it is really more in sort of the suspense thriller vein, which is not a knock against it at all. Just a sort of an observation on the lower frame of the fear metrometer. On the God factor, I'm going to say, so I think the film truly is more interested in just telling a compelling story in an interesting way than it is about trying to sort of unpack or explore any sort of deep, heavy themes. So at the risk of underselling it a little bit, I'm going to go 5.
I mean, I think sometimes love across time is all the substance you need. And, I think I'm going to land at a 7 on the substance. Doesn't have to be overly complicated. Just has to echo through eternity, Riri.
I like the cut of your jib there, Nathan. So that means that we give Dead Again, directed by Sir Kenneth Branagh, and starring Sir Kenneth Branagh and Dame Emma Thompson and Sir Derek Jacobi. Pretty sure he's a sir.
And Campbell Scott's leg.
And Campbell Scott's leg, and
Because
Monsieur
Campbell Scott may
Robin
be
Williams.
in
and-
it, but his leg is a star.
That is a true statement. So we give it a 5 out of 10 on the fog meter. So, which in terms of, you know, the fear and the substance meter definitely feels right. But I think the most important question is, do you recommend Dead Again?
I do. with I want to watch Dead Again.
I highly recommend it. I think it's great. I think it's a great film. I think it's a wonderful early 90s thriller, and I think it's it's really accessible. And I
was just thinking about, like, I am such an easy mark. Like, I'm thinking about Shutter Island last week, and how when you turn off Shutter Island, you want to go walk off a cliff. You know, like, it's just like, oh, where's the highest thing near me? I'll just go step off of it.
Bye.
But I got skills like Campbell, so I'm going to land on my feet, you know,
right.
not breaking a thing. Whereas you end Dead Again, and you just want to float on the wings of love.
Oh, on the wings
There you
of
go.
love. So yes, I think recommendations from us both for Sir Kenneth Branagh's Dead Again, and that puts episode 2 of season 2 of In the Morning, where we're covering The Leftovers and a series of films about revelations and hidden and surprise and secret revelations. Next week, we are going to be going to another film of kind of a similar framework. We are going to be going to James Mangold's Identity, starring John Cusack and Amanda Peet and Ray Liotta and a couple of other famous faces. So acquaint yourself with Identity for next week. We are also going to be covering episodes 5 and 6, which I have already seen, but Nathan still has to watch.
I mean, I saw them a long time ago.
Sure. No, I get it.
We had what I thought was a gentleman's pact, too.
Yeah, no, that's,
Nope.
I mean,
So
no,
much for that cross-time love.
No, it's in the past. Okay?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's just like that was
Care for some scissors?
yeah, that was Lead and Readin, and this is
Okay.
now. So acquaint yourself with episodes 5 and 6 of The Leftovers and James Mangold's Identity. We'll be back next week to discuss that. And until then, as we say on every episode, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, but not the end of the conversation. And in that spirit, we encourage you to fear nothing else and be on your way rejoicing. We'll see you next week, everybody.
I would never hurt you, Riri.
No,
See you guys.
Thank you for everything, buddy.
Yeah.
Where'd Reed go? Where'd Reed go? Where'd he go? Where'd the little guy go? Go, 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 go.